Thanks everyone for being interested in blockchain. Obviously something we're all passionate about. My name's Marc. The founder and CEO of a company called Aikon. And we really work on driving sort of mass adoption for DeFi and blockchain technology. Here's my stuff, just in case anyone ever wants to talk after this. Happy to get in touch. You just heard a great summary of NFTs. The work we do kind of touches on NFTs, but the vast majority of our customers are really involved in the DeFi space, decentralized finance, which, when I made this slide a month ago or whatever, the value of all crypto was about 1.6 trillion. I think now it's over 2 trillion. But when you look at that compared to the role of the size of the traditional banking industry, we still have about 100x to go, right? If DeFi eats centralized finance, as many of us expect it will. And for those who are kind of new to the concept of DeFi, the basic idea, as Christian was mentioning with smart contracts, the basic idea is to replace the work that's typically done by banks or hedge funds or anyone else in the finance industry with smart contracts that manage it automatically. One of my favorite examples are decentralized exchanges like Uniswap, where rather than having a stock exchange to trade things, you have individuals who are putting their own assets in and earning fees when their assets are traded. So, this is the type of reworking of a business model that actually has radical changes that I think are much deeper than just the technology, right? The fact that the traditional stock market takes 2 days to settle, and a DeFi stock exchange or crypto exchange may take seconds or minutes to settle is one thing. But I think the fact that you are taking out a company like ICE, replacing it with the people, and returning all that money back to the owners of assets, the owners of capital, I think is a huge cosmic kind of shift in the finance vertical. Another example is Compound. They do a very classic banking model, right? You put money in, they lend your money to someone else, and you get a small rate of return in interest. The way that happens today in America with, say, Chase Bank is they may take my deposits, loan it to someone for, 6%, and they give me like 0.25%. With Compound takes 0.25%, and I get the 6%. Because it's so much more efficient, because it's all done by a computer program. They don't need people, they don't need locations. They can return that money to me as the provider of capital. So there's a long way to go, but I honestly believe 10 years down the road, this whole $124 trillion will look much more like Compound and Uniswap than what it does today. And that's what we do, is we're people who provide the plumbing to help bring blockchain to the masses. So we work with blockchain projects to kind of expand their market. And we're particularly focused on identity, making it very easy to move your existing user base onto the blockchain. And so we have built a product called ORID, and it's sort of like this global identity registry that you could think of maybe as like a single sign-on approach for multiple blockchains. So Marc Blinder, the real person, might log in with a Google ID or an Apple ID, something that's very consumer friendly, email address, Instagram account, stuff we use every day, and then get multiple wallets on multiple blockchains so that I, as the consumer, don't have to even understand what blockchain I'm dealing with. I go directly to the application I want to use. So yeah, and not to shill myself too hard, but like what we do basically are these two SaaS products, ORID, which is kind of this wallet as a service that connects Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. That's really primarily used by companies that are trying to do something for the first time on the blockchain. So they're moving their existing user base onto the blockchain. So they can send 700,000 email addresses to our back end, and now we have 700,000 email addresses that have Ethereum wallets or Algorand wallets or EOS wallets. And then we have OR Vault, which is our like multi-sig wallet for teams. And that's designed to be like as easy as using DocuSign. And the whole idea there is that if a company is going to launch tokens or launch NFTs, you don't want any one person to be in control of that. It's like a logistical nightmare. It leads to a lot of sleepless nights for whoever's responsible for the $800 million that's sitting on their one laptop. The multi-sig wallets spread that responsibility among a team of executives, a team of managers, whatever it is. And so it makes it a lot friendlier for businesses that want to engage in this world. In the industry today, I mean, there's a lot of these like yield farming things going on, which is where people are just trying to move their money all over these different DeFi protocols to get high rates of return. Some of these are really like scammy, some are pyramid schemes. But one of the things I really wanted to say to a group of business leaders like yourself is that DeFi is really not just this kind of yield farming thing, which is famous as soon as you Google DeFi, right? We work really with companies that do things that probably would look more similar to what you're used to. So like we work with Republic on tokenized securities, right? So they want to tokenize their own equity, deploy it on Algorand, which is a blockchain that is very fast, very inexpensive to transact on. And so in this case, they're deploying on chain, but they already have this existing group of users because it's a crowdfunding platform. So they wanted to leave the user experience as it is. People are logging in with an email address and password, but give these users the ability to buy tokenized equity because it gives you all this, as Chris was talking about, all this like better traceability, faster auditing, more reliability, less potential for failure, like all that great stuff, but without asking the users to understand any of that stuff, right? Just like you would buy anything else on Republic in terms of early stage equity, you can now buy tokens. And so, they did the note, was the first one we did together with them. But they have others. They actually have a really cool NFT fund we're working with, right? Where it's like crowdfunding where you can invest in a fund that buys NFTs, right? But the whole point is to keep it as user-friendly as possible. Another example, and then I'm coming close to wrapping up. I won't keep you too long. Alliance Block is another big partner of ours. They're trying to do decentralized capital markets and really connect in a legally compliant way these sort of major sources of capital from the traditional financial world. They're all like former UBS, Societe Generale type bankers, and do that in a decentralized way that's on the blockchain. So it's open source, it's done with smart contracts, it's very efficient, cost-wise, things settle quickly. And at the same time, they're enabling these sort of traditional sources of capital to invest in some of these very new and unusual kind of products that are creating all this innovation in the DeFi space. We're still in the first inning, to use a sports metaphor here, right? Like this is very early days. So it's not like this is all done, but this is what is being worked on. And I think this is the change that's happening under all our feet right now. And personally gets me very excited because transparency and fairness is what attracted me to the blockchain in the first place. One of the great things about these smart contracts is they treat everyone exactly the same. The Ethereum block time, the Ethereum transaction cost is the same if you are in Lahore, Pakistan, if you are sitting in Indonesia, if you are sitting in Mountain View. And the rest of the internet does not work that way, right? Everything else on the internet is like, if you're sitting in Mountain View, that's where you want to be. So I really appreciate this kind of move that's happening toward this new, more kind of equitable, open, and transparent and accountable financial system. So last bit, to leave you with a little excitement. We think public blockchains, absolutely, we believe in NFTs for the long run, but we think most of the use cases are going to be finance and DeFi. It's just the biggest market in the world, and it's the perfect solution to those problems. So DeFi definitely here to stay. And The one thing that's going to happen though on that journey is there's going to be a lot of colossal screw ups, right? This is like totally new types of code. Some of these projects are total scams. Some of these are built by amateurs that are well intentioned. And so there's going to be a lot of famous failures. And there's going to be a lot of what we call in the industry FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And there's going to be a huge incentive for that to be magnified by entrenched players, right? So what we used to see 3 years ago is whenever anything would go wrong in the blockchain space, Jamie Dimon would come out and tell everyone Bitcoin is a fraud, right? And then now JP Morgan has their own blockchain, they have their own tokens, they have their own currencies. So obviously, the entrenched players are coming along on this journey, but on every step of the way, they're going to be saying, oh, look at that screw up, right? That's why you want to keep coming to Chase to do your banking, even though we're now using cryptocurrency. And so I think that will cause the public sector, governments, to play a really big role. Christian was talking about identity and putting your identity on chain, and that type of thing, like the KYC, the anti-money laundering, I think is going to be a much bigger part of the future of the blockchain than it was of the past, just because there's this huge industry around magnifying disasters, even if they're relatively small compared to the rest of the market. And so regulators are naturally going to step in and do what they do, which is fine. I think that's a key part of driving actual mass adoption for most consumers. And then just last thing here, we really believe as a business that the trust in financial infrastructure or public blockchains is going to be key, but that'll be married to centralized hosting because it's always going to be more performant and more cost effective. And so our CTO at Aikon, Trey, really is this believer in like blockchain where necessary, other cloud hosting when you don't need to use the blockchain, right? Because it minimizes the kind of footprint on this relatively expensive to operate thing, right? If you put something on Ethereum, 40,000 computers around the world need to run a copy of it. So it's much more expensive than sticking it on one server in Google Cloud, right? And so you want to do that for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons, because you're using a lot of resources. And yeah, even though there will be fewer blockchains than we have today, there's like thousands out there right now. There will be consolidation, there will be failures. We still think in the long run, there will be multiple public blockchains with different technical specialties. There are some true believers that it's going to be all Bitcoin or it's going to be all Ethereum or whatever. But I think what we've seen with the history of the internet is that over time, you tend to coalesce around on the order of like 10 major players that do 90% of the hosting, right? Google, Amazon, Netflix, right? YouTube, like they're doing 90% of the traffic. And then the rest of it is going to be taken up by your sort of niche players that do one thing really well, right? Like if you're truly serious about tracking wine on a public blockchain, you may well want a separate wine supply chain blockchain, just because it can be super efficient and super cheap and have certain things built in that other blockchains don't have. So that's kind of what we're doing today, what the future looks like in our eyes, and my like proselytizing of DeFi is a good thing. And I hope everyone takes a chance to play around with some of these things like Compound, like Uniswap, like liquidity mining, all this really cool stuff, because I think it's actually bringing the world to a better place in the future than it has been in the past. Yeah, so thanks for listening.